We have been watching, naturally enough, events in Dublin. 4 tries to 1 for Ireland against the French. It was nip and tuck, it toed and froed. It was a heavyweight, titanic occasion, lived up to expectations. Last 15, 20 minutes, maybe, Ireland just got their nose in front, looked fresher, looked fitter. Had been a theme during the week, the fitness issue. Had been.
I'm not so sure that the French were out on their feet. They made almost 250 tackles in the game compared to Ireland's about 150. Tells you the dominance of Ireland with the ball. But look, let's come back a little bit. It was a phenomenal game. That first half is as good a 40 minutes of rugby that you'll ever see. Both sides just went at it and went at it and went at it, ball in hand. Almost no scrums, no line. There were, but I'm saying the numbers were minimal. And to give referee Barnes his due, he kept his whistle in his pocket for a lot of the game.
Yeah.
It was a great game of rugby, like we predicted. And the best team won. If you had said we're going to score a bonus point 4 tries and have 3 of them in the first 25 minutes, like no one would have believed that. It was a great game.
And keep the French to just 1 try.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Around the hour mark, we were chatting, watching the game, and you sort of almost talking to yourself as much as anything. You said there's no real definite trend to this game. It's 2 great teams just trading punches.
Yeah, it wasn't like one side, you know, the scrum was poor or defensive errors, and you know, possibly the only thing was France made break after break close to the ruck, the first 2 or 3 defenders, which is something you'd expect in the under-8s.
Yeah.
You know, not at the international level, and a really good analysis by Ireland. But it wasn't one thing, it was a collective. It was the combination of players. And I think, you know, Doris's pass to Gary Ringrose for the last try that sealed the game, that was just a piece of brilliance, but there was so much brilliance through the game.
Yeah.
Dupont, magnificent. All the Irish players. Finlay Bealham, like, he was absolutely superb today in set piece and the ball in hand. It wasn't one thing, it was a collective, a real example of team sport.
Yeah, I think Ireland were superb. Need to give them enormous amount of credit. Matt says it wasn't overly one-sided. There was parts of the game I'd be inclined to maybe disagree a little bit. You know, Ireland scored 4 tries to 1. They were held up over the French try line 4 times. You could argue that Ireland should have put that game out of question an awful lot earlier. You know, France didn't create a huge amount. I thought their ruck was very poor. But Ireland's desire to get back into the game, some of their defensive work was as good as we have seen from this team. And, you know, there was a period there between 40 to 50 minutes at the start of the second half. Ireland were getting a little bit shaky, and then Sexton went off, and you started just to think, are we losing our way here? But you have to credit the bench as well enormously. O'Toole, Casey came on. Ross Byrne, these guys got valuable championship minutes. They're proper championship minutes with 25 minutes to go, and you've got to grind out and steer the ship home.
Does that rubber stamp Byrne's position as number 2?
I think so. You know, myself and Matt were talking off air, and he said that he could see a real look in Ross Byrne's eyes that, you know, almost a killer instinct. And when he came on, he probably knew that the next 25 minutes of this game could determine how the next few years of his career goes. If he can come on when Johnny goes off injured, steer the ship, lead Ireland home into victory, I think we now know who Ireland's number 2 out half is.
Would that make you a good deal more confident we're a World Cup quarter-final to throw up Ireland against France, or very little bearing on 6 months' time?
It makes me feel more confident. I think it would have been a tougher blow for Ireland if they hadn't won that game. I kind of understand what Matty means, though, with every piece of data you would take from that game. 4 tries to 1, held up over the line 3-4 times. Even the tackle count, Ireland obviously had a massive amount of possession and threatened them. And like, you can't create a stat based on my nervousness, but there's something about when France had the ball, I was very nervous. There was 3 or 4 or 5 times where guys just getting their nose through and looking for offloads, and you have a feeling if that offload sticks, they're going the length.
Yes.
So they felt like such a threat, and I'm not sure if the numbers will back that up, but I certainly felt like until they're dead, they were not dead at all.
Yes, they're running in the loose extraordinary, and they didn't kick the ball as much as they traditionally do.
And that's what Matty's talking about with and there's no structure to the game. There was no, okay, I've seen this before, I know what's going to happen here. France play out of their half, throw the ball around, just having the crack as if they're playing in their back garden, but 15 unbelievably talented athletes playing in someone's back garden. And then Ireland get the ball and you think, okay, let's get sensible, let's put a bit of structure around this. And then they start chasing the game as well and throwing the ball around. It was an unbelievable test match. And the skill on display was incredible, the pace and the threat from everyone. But I just thought France massively played their part in making it an incredible test match. And in the same scenario, in a quarter-final in France, those passes could stick very, very easily, and I'd be just as nervous then.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting, like on Andrew's point, it was an unusual game because the number of line-outs and scrums for a test match is very, very low because both teams sort of had the tactic, don't kick it out, we're going to back ourselves. So you had 30 guys on the field the whole time saying, we're going to back ourselves, we're going to back ourselves. The attitude was sensational. So that meant that those numbers of almost 400 or plus 400 tackles combining the teams meant the ball's on the field a lot of the time. And it created...
I think France will have learnt a big lesson from that.
For sure.
Playing against Ireland, if we do go to a World Cup, their tactics will be very different to how they played tonight. And, it was probably, you could argue, quite silly of them trying to take Ireland on at ball and play time.
At their own game, really.
Exactly, exactly. We know Ireland are superior in terms of their conditioning. We know France are a bigger, heavier team, and it's only natural that they're going to tire quickly. You throw in the bench of a 6-2 split. I think you probably have to question France's tactics today.
If there'd been only a couple of points in this game, you suspect the James Lowe try would be much discussed on French television. What was your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, we didn't get the clearest of angles. There was one very specific angle after the conversion had taken, and you could almost definitely say his foot was in touch.
Very French, that, isn't it?
It's exactly what they do in the Stade de France by controlling the pictures.
There was a forward pass last year, and that angle wasn't shown in Paris. And I don't know, we saw the better angle maybe after the referee had made their decision.
No, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but did Wayne Barnes say on-field decision?
Yes, he did.
Was a try?
Yeah. So you needed overwhelming evidence to discount it.
Now, in saying that, we saw on the live pictures after the conversion was taken a different camera angle that the TMO was watching. So I don't think he got all the evidence.
Antonio got a yellow for a hit as well on Herring. Your thoughts on whether that was sufficient? And also Herring seemed to stay on a touch longer than would be immediately obvious to all of us as to why, well, straight away, one replay, quick, HIA.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's no decision to make there. As soon as that happens, he should be off. It felt like he didn't play anymore. No. But it felt like, okay, there's a scrum, there's a few things going on. Oh yeah, by the way, you should get him off, which that obviously should be the first thing that happens. While the rest of us are getting carried away with the theatre of the whole thing, whoever's making that decision, I suppose, shouldn't be in that position. But yellow card, I think he got a little bit lucky. I think it's a red card. I know there's a little bit of a conversation about, sliding up in that second point, but the second point is the recoil, or not the recoil, the kind of, the head kind of flipping into his shoulder, and that for me is a 100% red card, no dip at all. Sorry, not 100% red card, but I certainly think it's red enough. I think he got lucky.
Rome in week 3, Murrayfield week 4, England and Dublin week 5.
Well, it's everything's still on, isn't it? All three. Triple Crown. Still on, Grand Slam still on, Championship, and that is really healthy for the team, healthy for Irish rugby, great for all of us here that are talking about it. But you've also got to say to the French, to the long term, personally, I think for the French, that's not a bad thing in the long term. I know this sounds crazy, there's no such good thing as losing. The longer you go on a winning streak, the closer you are to the end of it. And it takes all the pressure off because all the talk in France is, breaking records, doing all this, doing that. Bang, you've got a reset button 6 months out from the World Cup. And I think that's healthy because France weren't... everything Robbie said is 100% accurate. I think France will learn a lot. They'll go away. They'll change. They'll change their tactics when they take on Ireland again. But they haven't been disgraced, hasn't been a shellacking, even though the tries would say that.
Yeah.
But I think we've got to give Ireland the credit for creating such brilliant tries, and they were quite magnificent tries compared to that. So I think it was a great Test match, one of the best I've seen in many years.
Yeah.